You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
Hey there, welcome to episode 170 of the Soul Forge podcast.
Welcome to the Soul Forge, a place of silent mystery, quiet contemplation, and outright mayhem. Join your host, Sean Vanderloo, as he guides you through the adventures of living. Together, we'll talk about life and love, sex and dating, joy and heartache, memories and loss, and so much more. Don't worry, it's not nearly as pretentious as it sounds. Get ready for life, the universe, and everything on the Soul Forge.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. Hope you've been enjoying your 2020 so far. We're in the home stretch. It's mid-September. Shouldn't be too many bad things happening before the end of the year. We're going to all escape unscathed, hopefully. Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. It's hard to say what's going to happen. Just trying to come up with ideas for this week's podcast, and an article I came across was that thousands of people witnessed UFOs in New Jersey on September 14th. So that's a thing. And there might be life on Venus. That's what's going on. We don't know. Of course, they're saying that the New Jersey UFO could just be some kind of military test vehicle. And as for life on Venus, they don't know for sure, but there is phosphine in the atmosphere, which is a definite sign of life, apparently. So there could be some kind of microbes or something on Venus. I guess we'll know soon. Who knows when? We don't know. Let the scientists do their work, and we will figure it out. But what I wanted to talk about this week are cultural touchstones. I think that's the best way to describe it. Things that link societies together, that link people together in a common unity of some kind or another. And what brought this on? Well, The Land Before Time. Have you seen those movies? I have not. So this past weekend on the Rusted Robot podcast, episode 306, we were talking about, I don't even remember what, but Kitty asked me something about the Land Before Time movies, and I have not seen them. She is a huge fan of the first one. I guess there's 14 movies, and they all get pretty bad, but the first one is amazing, and it'll make you cry, and it's a defining movie of her generation. She's about, I believe, 10 years younger than me, roughly. So I was born in 76, and she was born somewhere in the mid-80s. I'm not sure of the exact time, but I guess if you were born and raised in the 80s, you've probably seen The Land Before Time. All I know, it's a bunch of dinosaurs walking through, I was going to say the jungle, but I don't even know because I haven't seen it. But apparently it's super sad, and it would make me cry. After that episode came out, a bunch of people actually said, Sean, you need to go see The Land Before Time. Especially Dan, my co-host on the Cosmic Pizza podcast, which I hope you're all checking out.
Hello, I'm Daniel Peter Hitch, author of the Bubbles the Pirate children's book series and the Connected Worlds Chronicles. You're listening to the Soul Forge podcast. Keep forging your soul.
He said I gotta watch it. Josh and Kitty said I had to watch it. Other people said I had to watch it. So apparently I need to watch The Land Before Time. And maybe I will do that one of these days. And then do a podcast episode about it. What do you guys think? What kind of episodes are you looking forward to in the future? Let me know. Because week after week, it's not easy to come up with episode topics. So your help would be greatly appreciated. soulforgepodcast@gmail.com. That's the best way to get hold of me. Of course, if you go to soulforgepodcast.com, there's all kinds of ways to get a hold of me there too. All the links, YouTube channel, the coffee support portal. What else we got there? We've got the Twitter link, the Facebook page link, all the things. Check me out all over the internet. I was thinking, what am I going to talk about this week? Well, I'm going to talk about some cultural touchstones. Pulled up a definition of a cultural touchstone, and it's basically a cultural phenomena that simply links generations in a society. What is a touchstone to begin with? Well, basically it was a marker or like a guide so that in the ancient times Let me just find it exactly here. A hard black stone such as jasper or basalt, formerly used to test the quality of gold or silver by comparing the streak left on the stone by one of these metals with that of a standard alloy. So basically, the older works of known quality are the cultural touchstones, which we compare to all contemporary works. And what that all basically means is that it's the shining example. This is what we're measuring things against. And that's not exactly what I mean by cultural touchstones. I'm kind of thinking of things that, you remember where you were when these events occurred or happened. So, like, for example, the most famous one is, I remember where I was when I heard the news that JFK was shot. Of course, I wasn't born yet. That's 14 years before I was born, 13 years before I was born. What was it, 1963? So, yeah, years and years before I was born. But similar things, where were you when Martin Luther King was shot and killed? Where were you when so-and-so died? Where were you when Abraham Lincoln was shot in the theater? Well, none of you were alive, so you weren't anywhere. But these are the kinds of things that I've been thinking about. And so for this week's topic, I wrote down a bunch of cultural touchstones that probably, for the most part, at least if you're here in the Western civilization, would link your culture to mine. Maybe you're from a different generation, maybe you're older, maybe you're younger, but there are all kinds of different things that we realize or take as examples from society as markers or as defining moments or watershed events that change the course of society. Now, all of these won't be, but I do have quite a list. Before we get into that, I'm just going to go play a promo for another podcast right here on the ESO Network.
Are you one of millions of people worldwide with compulsive geekiness, feeling isolated and alone? Do you wish there were people that understood the thoughts and feelings associated with geeky flare-up? There is hope and a treatment program that can help. Ask your podcast service or ESO network provider if the Nerd Bliss podcast is right for you, or go to nerdblisspodcast.com today. Side effects may include butthurt, movie quotes, nostalgia, warp speed, becoming verklempt, becoming a brony, appreciation of Cats the movie, pantyhose, asking God what he needs with a starship, donut, muffin, or bagel, fat shoelaces, improved sense of rhythm, aiming to misbehave, nudity, and random arbitrary lists.
Wasn't that a great promo? Are you going to go check out that podcast? I bet you are, because why wouldn't you, right? Okay, so where were you when JFK was shot? Where were you when Martin Luther King was shot? Where were you when Rodney King was beaten in, I think, 1992? Where were you when OJ fled from the police in his white Bronco? That was 1994, and I watched it on the big screen at my brother Robin's dad's house, I think it was, or something like that. I remember watching it, and it was a slow speed chase, and it was all over the news forever. So that was 94. What else we got for cultural touchstones? How about the War of the Worlds broadcast from, I believe, in 1938? I didn't look it up exactly, but we all know that War of the Worlds was a novel written by H.G. Wells, and in the late 30s, the other Wells, Orson Welles, did a radio play, and some people thought it was a real thing. None of those people are around to talk about it anymore, so can't really get any first-hand accounts of it, but that was a thing, and I bet it was a huge thing because there was no TV back then, just the radio and newspapers. So that was huge. But what else have we got for cultural touchstones? Well, how about the Olympics? Those are always watched by millions and millions of people. People generally have their favorites and all that kind of stuff. I never did like the Olympics, mostly because it was shoved down our throat back in grade 6 in 1988. And no, maybe that was grade 7. And we had to do so many articles on it and projects and whatever. And I'll never forget, it was in Seoul, Korea. Was that the Ben Johnson, Carl Lewis running thing where the dope scandal? I think that was that one. But oh my God, I couldn't stand the Olympics for years afterwards just because the teacher made a huge course on it and was obsessed by it, and I couldn't stand it. So that's a big thing. Probably another big cultural milestone, touchstone thing from history would be the sinking of the Titanic in 1912, because it was the unsinkable ship that sunk on its first voyage. So I'm sure that was a huge defining moments for people of that era. Also, World War I and World War II. Huge, huge things that changed the course of civilization. Where were you for those? Well, you weren't born yet because you're not that old. Those are huge things. So Titanic, the real one, and then Titanic, the movie from 1997. Who didn't see that movie? What did it make? It was the highest grossing film for decades until the MCU came along. Or was it Lord of the Rings? Those were huge films too. Lord of the Rings and the MCU. Big, big movies. Everybody talks about them. If you haven't seen them, then you're certainly missing out because spoilers ahead. Well, not really. I'm not going to spoil anything of those movies, but everybody saw them, everybody talked about them, everybody knows about them, and if you haven't seen them, then you kind of feel left out of the cultural conversation.
That's how Dad did it. That's how America does it. And it's worked out pretty well so far.
So, for example, let's go with other cultural things that most people would know about. Of course, there's the television episodes that people talk about. Who shot JR? Was that Dallas or Dynasty? I don't know. I never watched that. That's before my time. But that was a huge thing that people still talk about. And then they parodied it on The Simpsons with Who Shot Mr. Burns? And that was a similar kind of thing over the summer. It was all the speculation. And if you were into that kind of TV show back then you knew what I'm talking about. Just like when Luke and Laura got married. I believe that's one of the soap operas, and that was huge. I don't know what soap opera it's from. I've just heard of Luke and Laura and the Big Wedding. And of course, when Charles and Diana got married, that was huge. That was all over the TV. Just like in 2011 when William and Kate got married, that was huge. That was all over the news. And what I remember from that were the fancy hats that all the British ladies wore, and that was a huge thing that they talked about for months afterwards. What else have I got on my list here? How about huge songs, big songs when they came out? Like, you remember when Black and White came out from Michael Jackson back in 1991? They premiered the video on TV, and that was a huge, huge song. All kinds of different things like that. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but let's go with Black and White from Michael Jackson. Let's go with You Oughta Know from Alanis Morissette. Let's go with Shania Twain's 1995 album as well. Why can't I think of any of those songs? Maybe Whose Bed Have Your Boots Been Under? Maybe that's one. But that's not the big one from that album. I can't remember what it is actually, because that's 25 years ago. But whatever. Other big songs, can I think of any? No, I can't. Not off the top of my head. I should have wrote some down, but I didn't. What else we got? We got, in the 70s, Roots came on TV, and that was a huge thing, which I have never seen. It's got LeVar Burton in it, and he played Geordi LaForge from Star Trek The Next Generation, and Star Trek is a huge cultural touchstone as well. You got your original fans who watched it when it first came out in the 60s. Then you have your second generation fans who watched the reruns in the 70s. And then you have, well, we used to call them new fans who started with Next Generation, but that's not a thing anymore, because you have your original fans who watched the 60s series, then you have your next-gen fans who watched the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise, and now you got your new fans who either got into it with the J.J. Abrams films from 2009 onwards, or fans who jumped on board with either Discovery,
Black Alert. Black Alert.
Picard, or Lower Decks. So you got all kinds of different genres of fans there, different generations. Star Wars is a huge one too. Everybody thinks that I'm a huge Star Wars fan, but it's actually Star Trek that I like, but I like both. But Star Wars came out in 1977 and changed the cultural landscape. It redefined what a blockbuster film was. It redefined toy merchandising. It redefined the space opera. It had a huge impact on all of society. And with Star Trek and Star Wars, people compare them. They're not the same. They both take place in space, but that's really it. But whether they're the same or not, it doesn't matter. You can enjoy both or you can enjoy none. It doesn't matter. But they've had huge impacts on society, especially Star Trek with all the technology like the flip phone and the tricorder, 3D printing, and all kinds of things like that. Huge, huge things. What else have we got? Where were you when Seinfeld ended its run? Or how about Friends? You remember those?
We were on a break! We were on a break!
They were on a break.
Those were watched by millions and millions of people. Big cultural phenomenons. Friends and Seinfeld. Huge shows from the 90s. I guess you could add Cheers to that. When it ended in the early 90s, that was a huge thing. Maybe MASH. Maybe even Happy Days and all of its spin-offs. Those were huge shows that define a generation. What else have we got? Oh, where were you when you found out about 9/11? I was living in North Bay and I didn't have TV at the time, and my roommate came home to tell me that there was a huge attack in the US, and I didn't see the footage for like 2 days because I didn't have TV. Yeah, that was really something. But you also got your earthquakes, your tornadoes. How about Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans from, 2004 or 2005? Those are huge defining moments that define a generation, define a localized geographical area, but everybody knows about it. People still talk about Hurricane Katrina, or what is it, Sandy Hook, or is that a school shooting? There's school shootings. There's other kinds of things like that. Huge things. What else have we got? We've got Game of Thrones. When that came out, that was gigantic. I still haven't seen season 8 yet. And the memes still go around. Oh, I belong to that 10% of the population that's never seen an episode of Game of Thrones. And people wear that like a badge. Who cares? I didn't watch it for a long time either. And then I got an Android box and watched all of the first 6 seasons, and it was awesome. How about Netflix shows? Those are huge. What do we got? We got The Witcher. We've got the Tiger King show. That was a huge cultural phenomenon just at the beginning of the pandemic, I guess. Yeah. And 2020 is a huge cultural touchstone for everybody. Everybody's in a pandemic. What else we got? We got the MCU. We got Game of Thrones. We got fancy, huge Netflix shows. We've got The Boys on Amazon Prime. That's a huge show as well. How about the Cash Me Outside Girl? Remember when that was a big thing a few years ago?
That's what I always do, and they never catch me. Ain't nobody gonna catch me.
Because you're too streetwise?
Yup.
Huh?
Catch me outside, how about that?
Catch you outside? What does that mean?
What I just said.
I had to ask my my brother's younger buddy there what it meant, because I didn't know. The Cash Me Outside Girl, it was all the memes for like ever. So that was that crazy girl who didn't know how to speak, and she just did whatever she wanted, and she ran loose, and everybody was cash me outside, cash me outside. So that was a thing. And the last thing I've written down here is Me Too movement, which I believe originated in 2017, or when it got its most amount of steam. The bad celebrities got called out for what they did, like Kevin Spacey and Harvey Weinstein and all those guys. Who's that? Louis C.K. and his masturbation hobby, I guess is what you would call it. So that was a huge thing as well. But basically, that's what I wanted to talk about this week on the show. I've never seen The Land Before Time, and I bet there's all kinds of things out there that are huge cultural milestones that you guys have never seen as well. Like, I'm sure lots of you have never seen Game of Thrones or any of the MCU movies. Like I said, I didn't watch Roots, but that was huge in the 70s. So what do you guys think? Are there cultural touchstones or huge movements in history that affect society? Either redirects how you think about something, or what else could it do? I don't even know. It just really makes you think. It connects you to a larger society as a whole, and it's pretty incredible when you think about it, because we all share these certain things that earlier generations shared different things, and we don't know what those were. Like if you could go back and talk to somebody from 1842, what's their big thing that they all know about? Who knows? Probably some war or something, or another disease, but whatever. So we've got Game of Thrones, and we've got Netflix, and we've got the MCU, we've got Star Trek and Star Wars and Titanic, and when celebrities die or get shot or whatever. Just huge things that really make you think. Anyway, that's what I wanted to bring to you this week. I'd love to hear from you guys, your opinions, your thoughts, things that I missed.
I completely missed Neil Armstrong and the moon landing.
Other things that make you feel connected to society. Let me know. soulforgepodcast@gmail.com. So next week, I'll bring you another exciting episode of I don't even know what yet, but I hope you'll tune tune in, check it out, leave a 5-star review in the podcast store, send some donations my way with the coffee link on the webpage. But until next time, take care, and remember, everything you need will come to you at the perfect time. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Soul Forge Podcast. Your support is greatly appreciated, and we hope you'll tune in again next time. Remember that you can visit soulforgepodcast.com for all of our social media links, and don't forget to share the show with everyone you know. The Soul Forge Podcast is your best source for living your best life.
Think about it.
Hi Gawkers, it's April the 11th, Sunday. It's another lovely day, so I'm out here in the backyard. And today I want to talk about cultural touchstones. And by that I mean those things that we can say or write. When you say or write them, everybody knows exactly what you're talking about. And it used to be these things were Bible quotes, Shakespearean quotes. You know, if you said, "I'm in the 9th level of hell here," everyone knew exactly what that meant. You know, the worst possible conditions you could be in. And most of the people would understand that came from Dante's Inferno. But apparently they don't teach the classics anymore in school. People don't read Shakespeare. They obviously aren't reading the Bible. So I'm wondering where our cultural touchstones come from nowadays. And they seem to come from a couple of places. One, the movies, and the other is the internet. And neither are as widespread as the classics used to be, because it used to be we were all taught those in school. We taught exactly the same thing. But now it's kind of hit or miss. Did you see the movie? Did you not? Did you know what I'm quoting? When I say I'm on a mission from God, did you see the Blues Brothers? I don't know. So you don't know where that's coming from. And if you don't watch YouTube a lot, then you miss out on a lot of the memes, like "All your base are belong to us," which is one of my favorite. So it's kind of hit or miss what kind of cultural touchstones we have anymore. So this week your assignment is to pick up a copy of the classics and read something. And I don't care if you get the Cliff Notes. Don't tell anybody I told you that. But you can get the Cliff Notes. You can pick up a copy of Romeo and Juliet, Richard III, grab a Bible. I know you got one in your house. And read some and find out where these cultural touchstones come from. Because without them, we have a hard time having a conversation. And I feel like I'm talking past you and you're talking past me because we don't share a common point of reference. There was an old Star Trek, I'm going to geek out for a minute. Star Trek The Next Generation episode where they meet these aliens that speak in metaphors. And they're having the hardest time conversing with them until they realize what they're trying to say, they don't know the background to. And Dr. Crusher says at one point, "Oh, it's like if we were to say Juliet on her balcony," and it's an image of romance. And I'm afraid today if you said that to somebody, they would go, "Who the hell's Juliet? I don't know nobody named Juliet. What's she doing on a balcony? Was she in a hotel or something?" So pick up a copy of Shakespeare, pick up your Bible, and find some cultural touchstones to use when you write something or when you make a vlog. And I hope I've got the sound right today. I tried a little bit to play with the microphone and I put the dogs away. So I'm sorry about yesterday and the dogs scaring the living crap out of a few people when they barked. But that's April 11th. I'm Randy Barefoot. Have a good one.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping at the TeePublic store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.